Another high-ranking member of Saddam Hussein's inner circle has been captured. As for Saddam himself, a would-be Iraqi leader sponsored by the United States now says Saddam is still alive and still in Iraq. CBS's David Martin has late details from Washington.
He is one of Saddam's most notorious henchmen, a key figure in the indescribably brutal suppression of the short-lived revolt by the Shiites of southern Iraq following the first Gulf War. Mohammed Hamza Zubaidi, the Queen of Spades in the deck of 55 Most Wanted, is officially retired, but still has a lot to answer for. His arrest follows by a day the surrender of Saddam's son-in-law, Jamal Mustafa al-Tikriti, a one-time member of his personal security detail. Jamal's real claim to fame may be that he is Saddam's only surviving son-in-law. The other two were murdered, presumably on orders from Saddam, after they told the CIA some of the secrets of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program.
8 of the 55 most wanted members of Saddam's regime are now in custody. And these last 2 were turned over by Iraqis who also claim to have intelligence about the whereabouts of Saddam and his sons.
Ahmed Shalabi, who has returned from exile in a bid to become the leader of the new Iraq, told BBC Radio Saddam is in Iraq and on the move.
We are aware of his movements, and we are aware of the areas that he has been to, and we learn of this within 12 to 24 hours.
With some Iraqis demonstrating against the U.S., American troops have by no means won the battle for Iraqi hearts and minds. But Saddam has definitely lost it. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld says more and more Iraqis are coming forward to help.
In Baghdad, local civilians led coalition forces to the home of a general in the Special Republican Guards, where they found a trove of documents, computers, and various other materials.
Iraqis also led American troops to what may be the most valuable find yet, a warehouse with enough medical supplies to equip all of Baghdad's hospitals for the next 6 to 12 months. Saddam's regime is giving up its secrets, but in a country where even the location of medical supplies was once a secret, there is a long way to go. David Martin, CBS News, The Pentagon.
No one has officially declared the war in Iraq over, but it certainly doesn't look much like a war anymore. Marines have moved out of Baghdad, going south, leaving the Army in charge in the Iraqi capital. And as of today, America's point man in Baghdad is a retired general assigned to restore the country to normalcy and rebuild it as soon as possible. He is Jay Garner, who rose to the rank of lieutenant general in the U.S. Army before retiring in 1997. Now, as CBS's Lee Cowan reports from Baghdad, at the age of 65, General Garner has taken on what could be the toughest task of his life.
It looked like a campaign swing through the heart of Baghdad. Jay Garner, how are you? And it was. From the tour of a damaged power plant to a local hospital, this retired 3-star general was glad-handing just a few of the 24 million Iraqis who now depend on him to put their lives back together.
New ruler of Iraq is going to be an Iraqi. I don't rule anything.
Not since Douglas MacArthur oversaw the rebuilding of Japan has such a Herculean task fallen to just one person. Under his charge, millions of dollars in aid and billions in new construction contracts to repair what 20 years of war and 13 years of sanctions have torn apart. Top priorities remain water and power. 400 other Americans will join the effort by the end of the week, but there are no promises of a speedy renewal. And patience here is already running thin. Despite the general's best efforts to make it appear as if the U.S. were offering a helping hand, there are still plenty of people here who see it more as a fist. There are still anti-American protests here, from the streets of Baghdad to the neighborhood mosques, where some clerics preach that Iraq will only be normal again when the Americans leave.
I used to work here.
But Alhan Khaldoun says the Americans have an obligation to stay, to fix, she says, what they broke. Her office was on the 3rd floor of this telecommunications building.
The problem is, though, you want to go back to work, but...
Yeah, I want to go back to work.
The Iraqis, though, she says, can't rebuild without America's help. And each day that passes is another day without pay.
I have this golden ring, I have this wedding ring, I have this necklace.
Would you sell your wedding ring?
Well, of course, I have to. I have to feed my children, you know. I have to.
She's been without electricity now for 3 weeks. water comes and goes, and her 2 children don't know when they'll be able to return to school. For her family, General Garner is not a hero. He's a necessity. A man so many here want to see leave as quickly as he came. Lee Cowan, CBS News, Baghdad.
One reason General Garner was selected is that he did such a good job getting humanitarian and other help to the Kurds in northern Iraq after Gulf War I. Garner hopes now to establish good relations with Iraq's religious majority, Shiite Muslims, who are now making a pilgrimage long banned by Saddam Hussein. Iraqi highways are jammed with Shiites, watched by U.S. troops. Shiite leaders expect millions to reach Karbala, the holiest city of their sect, for the climax of the pilgrimage Wednesday. In the background is the fact that Iranian-connected Shiites are struggling with anti-Iranian elements for control in Iraq. In pressing for a campaign to oust Saddam Hussein, President Bush emphasized that the U.S. would stay in Iraq no longer than necessary. But just how long that may end up being remains an open question. And as CBS News White House correspondent Bill Plant reports tonight, it's now a growing debate inside the administration.
As Iraq's new American overseer began putting the pieces back together, the Bush administration wrestled over how long the U.S. should stick around in Iraq. A very irritated Donald Rumsfeld denied a report that the U.S. wants a long-term military relationship with Iraq's new government.
The impression that's left around the world is that we plan to occupy the country, we plan to use their bases over the long period of time, and it's flat false.
In fact, some administration officials think the U.S. should pull out in a hurry, just as soon as Iraq can be stabilized or risk being seen as an occupying power.
The longer we're there, I think the greater the danger that opposition to our presence will build.
And there's the cost. A Council on Foreign Relations study estimated that it would take a minimum of 75,000 troops and $20 billion a year. Congress has already appropriated almost $79 billion to pay for the war and reconstruction, but that's only for the next 6 months. Before the war began, the president pledged a sustained commitment.
We will remain in Iraq as long as necessary, and not a day more.
Many foreign policy experts think that as long as necessary is likely to be years, not months.
I think the challenges are just too great for the United States to withdraw the bulk of security forces in a matter of months.
How long is necessary is likely to be decided by events on the ground in Iraq. The U.S. occupied Japan for 7 years after World War II. But few believe that that kind of commitment will be possible in Iraq, necessary or not. Dan?
Bill Plant reporting live from the White House. One major factor in deciding how long U.S. forces may stay in Iraq is this: gauging the potential for a possible protracted guerrilla war campaign should Sunni Muslim soldiers and others loyal to Saddam reemerge as fighters. A U.S. hands. Today, it was the shadowy intelligence chief